Consider the well-known quote, frequently attributed to historian Alexander Tytler in the 1700s, reflecting on democracies in ancient Greece and Rome. Quote, "A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always vote for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship."
It has also been observed historically that a democracy only lasts about 200 years, during which a cycle can be observed. Henning Webb Prentice, Jr., president of the Armstrong Cork Company, referred to this cycle in a speech in 1943. Paradoxically enough, the release of initiative and enterprise made possible by popular self-government ultimately generates disintegrating forces from within. Again and again, after freedom has brought opportunity and some degree of plenty, the competent become selfish, luxury-loving, and complacent. The incompetent and the unfortunate grow envious and covetous, and all three groups turn aside from the hard road of freedom to worship the golden calf of economic security. The historical cycle seems to be from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependency back to bondage once more. So where are we now? Apathy? Dependence?
Stephen Olemacher, Associated Press writer, wrote on April 7, 2010, "Tax day is a dreaded deadline for millions, but for nearly half of U.S. households, it's simply somebody else's problem. About 47% will pay no federal income taxes at all for 2009. Either their incomes were too low or they qualified for enough credits, deductions, and exemptions to eliminate their liability. That's according to projections by the Tax Policy Center, a Washington research organization. In recent years, credits for low and middle income families has grown so much that a family of four making as much as $50,000 will owe no federal income tax for 2009, as long as there are two children younger than 17, according to a separate analysis by Touche. Tax cuts enacted in the past decade have been generous to wealthy taxpayers too, making them a target for President Barack Obama and Democrats in Congress. Less noticed were tax cuts for low and middle income families, which were expanded when Obama signed the massive economic recovery package last year. The result is a tax system that exempts almost half the country from paying for programs that benefit everyone, including national defense, public safety, infrastructure, and education. It's a system in which the top 10% of earners, households making an average of $366,000 in 2006, paid about 73% of the income taxes collected by the federal government. The bottom 40% on average make a profit from the federal income tax, meaning they get more money in tax credits than they would otherwise owe in taxes. For these people, the government sends them a payment. We have 50% of people who are getting something for nothing, said Curtis DeBay, senior tax policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation. If you look at these numbers, we may be somewhere in the apathy phase, with nearly 50% of the nation's population already having reached the dependency phase.
So what happens if Congress grants amnesty and citizenship to 20 to 30 million illegal aliens and they vote? Will we say goodbye to a democratic republic in the United States? John Gadsky, Ph.D., Associate Professor, Mendoza College of Business at the University of Notre Dame, who lists himself as a specialist in social and political power and a longtime registered Democrat, had this to say in the September 4, 2010 issue of American Thinker. "It is time to think the unthinkable and speak the ineffable. Apart from the troubling question of intent, or whether Obama, Pelosi, Reid just have a novel view of the public interest, the National Democrats are unnaturally and mysteriously signed despite growing backlash by the American people. Why? One reason. The Dems don't believe that they will ever have to face a real election again. Is their plan not becoming obvious? It is very straightforward. 1. Grant amnesty to the illegal aliens, the correct term for law-breaking invaders, regardless of their natural and rational moves, which will create up to 30 million reliably Democrat voters, especially after being registered at least once each by Acorn. That is cushion enough to carry any national election. Why else could Dems be so fixated on this agenda item? Items 2 through 6 we summarize as 2. Acorn-style voter registration, 3. Encouraging third-party candidates to split the opposition, 4. Rotting some of the trillions in stimulus money to Acorn and SEIU, and 5. Supporting universal voter registration, which brings Gadsky to 6. Universal health care. How much power does that give the Democrats over you? Might it occur to the intense partisans of the Obama administration to grant life-saving treatment to those they regard as their people, but not to others? Party registration is already public information, and if they can overturn the secret ballot for union elections via card check, how long before they try to impose the same more generally, so they will always know how you voted? Gadsky continues, chilling, isn't it, when the Democrats achieve literal death grip power over the lives of all our citizens? That's when they also achieve their long-cherished dream of absolute power in a virtual one-party state. Dictatorship in a one-party state indeed seems to loom for us. As one prominent commentator has pointed out, the normal order of the human condition is tyranny, subjugation, and dictatorship, with only a couple of respite periods throughout history, including our time in the West over the past 2 centuries or so. It just took that long for the totalitarian types to gain near-total power in our country, which they are now consolidating. What are the betting odds that they will ever let it go voluntarily?
As a long-standing citizens group, Citizens for Common Sense is encouraged by the current Tea Party movement, which gives us great hope that apathy will not carry the day and bring us to the next phases of dependence, followed by bondage.